Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion, just things we like to talk about around media and virtual production. Second hour is dedicated to something that we want to spend a little bit more time on. Now, on Saturdays, we don't stream the second hour. So if you're watching on YouTube, you should go register on officehours.global. You'll get an email on Sunday. You can join our merry crew and be here for the next one. Remember that so today we have education in the second hour and a half or so, and then we have the Belfast Method is happening at noon. So if you're within our Zoom community, you can check that out as well. It's going to be cool. I think we have a comedian, I believe, or stand-up that's going to be doing it. So it's going to be different than the ones in the past, and you get to watch the entire back engine work. So definitely check that out. All right, let's go ahead and and I have to hand this off to poor Tony. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the questions. I'm going to hand it over to, or I'm going to hand over the reins of the show to Emily Russo. Emily, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, or afternoon, or wherever you're joining us from, evening. We are so excited to jump right into some questions today, and it looks like we have a lot. So let's go ahead and get started with our first question.
All right, our first question is from Mike Emmett in Melbourne, Australia. Yesterday I had 10 people who will be remote participants in an event, and there were 2 who just didn't care how they looked and sounded. One said it was my problem to understand, not his to be intelligible. Do I just cut him out of the show? Go ahead, Vienna.
Yeah.
I would say
Oh, I'm sorry.
don't cut them out. If they're clients of yours, then I guess you could say that the client is always right or the customer is always right. And so you've done your job, Mike, by telling them how to look and sound good. Then it's up to them to take that knowledge and do what they like with it. Unfortunately, if you've got high stakes in this event, that might be a different thing. It might be a bit more complicated, but with something like this, there's only so much that you can do.
Jeffrey.
So I'm guessing you're not the host of it. So you figure out whoever is the host, the person that wants to do this show. I would check with them first, and if they don't care, then do your best to make it look and sound good. But yeah, I wouldn't put a lot of effort into it. Now, if they said no, they have to do it, then you have some sort of fuel to come back to and say, hey, you've got to do something. And then just throw out some suggestions anyway, like putting books underneath laptops and things like that to raise them up and get them to sounding and looking halfway decent.
Aye.
Again, I'm looking forward to hearing Alex's statement about, and then he'll make an email and stating this might be a situation. And that way your paper trail is there, but I'll let you do the details. I would think often a lot of this is fear, and people are doing things that they've never done before. So how to be empathetic, how to listen and feel the pain of doing something completely different, but hopefully show them something that are examples of good and bad in what you're expecting. Maybe that would help.
Alex.
Our most common way of handling it when talking to someone is to just remind them that, hey, there's other people that are putting a lot of effort into it. It's like they're all dressing up, and you should decide whether that's going to work for you to not look as good and sound as good as they do. So it's just something to think about. And oftentimes, we talk about the fact that it might be something we can go to a barbecue and dress a certain way, but when we get in front of a bunch of people, we dress differently. And so we those are some of the things we use while we're talking to folks about it. But to Sky's point, if someone doesn't want to do it, usually there's what we call a CYA that goes out to pointedly goes out to whoever the organizer is, saying this person is not going to be able to, we think that these are the issues that we'll see. These are it's not going to be up to the same standard, but of course it's your choice to make. And so if it's my choice to make, I just dump them out. So it's like, if it's my show and they don't do it, I just say, well, we're not going to have you here. So I'm much more brutal than most of our clients are. So anyway, that's how I approach it.
My best friend says you can never be overdressed. You can always be underdressed. And maybe you just need to tell them that. Next question.
Next question is from Mike Emmett again in Melbourne, Australia. Is it possible to make do with a built-in webcam from a remote guest if the audio is good?
Ken.
Yes, you can. Lighting is the key thing. Great lighting can make a average webcam look good. So if you can get really good lighting, then a webcam can be more than acceptable.
Deanna?
What Ken said, the answer is yes, I do it myself.
Chad?
Audio is more important than the video. It depends on how important you are and your appearance is to the effort that you're undertaking. What do you represent? If you have a little bit of lead time, maybe you can find a way to bring in good video. But as long as they can hear and understand what you're saying, and the important thing is that you're conveying a message, you're going to be all right.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, the only reason why audio would supersede any type of video is if you're displaying something like showing off this coffee cup or doing ASL or something like that. I've had many different situations where I've had to use the webcam, including those laptops where the webcam is actually underneath the monitor. And that's super hard to try and get positioned properly so it doesn't look like there's a keyboard in the way. Especially if they're trying to type and going from there. So, but yeah, everything else audio over video unless you have to display something.
That's in my nightmares, like audio over video for everything when it comes to Zoom. Next question.
Next question is from Mike Emmett again from Melbourne, Australia. Is it me, or is it really hard to EQ your own voice for Zoom? Should everyone have a Mickey?
Everybody should have a Mickey. Jeffrey?
Absolutely. But if you want to do it on your own, here's an easy way to do it. If you have something like OBS or Wirecast or vMix, you can actually put in a delay, a video audio delay into your channel. Come up on a Zoom, call up a Zoom on another computer, and then do like a 5-10 seconds worth of speaking. Wait about a second, and then you can actually watch yourself and how it sounds and looks from there. And then you can make your adjustments if you don't have a Mickey to pull from.
Ken?
Beauty is now we have after hours, which is on all the time after office hours. So that's the best place. You don't have to be by yourself. You can join us on after hours, and we will happily get you the right EQ for your audio.
Alex?
We like to think of ourselves in office hours as mini Mickeys. Like we're not a Mickey, but we're a mini Mickey. So we can kind of do what a mini Mickey can do. But anyway, but I think that one of the other things to remember is that Zoom can just record. So you can just open it up, record your session, and then play it back to yourself. Get it as close as you can through what you already have. And there is some adjustments. And then you have to decide what settings you want in Zoom and how that's going to actually affect your EQ.
Great points. Next question.
Next question is from Serge Blondin. Sorry about that. Tips on adjusting brightness of video. I have a Sony, so I control with ISO, aperture, shutter speed, but I'm never sure if brightness should be lower or higher.
Guy?
Yeah, I would say to take a look at your histogram. Most of the cameras these days will have a histogram, and you could bring that up and take a look and see where you're going. But you're normally going to be starting with your ISO, and then you're going to have a shutter speed that is most likely going to be what you're dependent on your frame rate. So if you're at 30, you're going to be at 60th of a second. So that one's kind of a given. And then your aperture is just depending on the look that you want. And then I would use something. Are you on a Mac or PC, Serge? Are you? Because if you're on go ahead.
I'm on a Mac.
You're on a Mac, then I would probably get Nobe, I believe it's called, Omniscope, and I would take a look at, and there's a free trial, and run your scope through there, or you can come in after hours, and then these ones from Scopebox are available. Scopebox is kind of pricey. I think it's $1,000, but you could also rent it for a year for like $120. I think during Black Friday you get a sale. So those are some tips to help you with your brightness.
Deanna?
I like to adjust my video organically. So things like brightness and saturation, to me, they're like in post. So you start with aperture, and that's to do with your depth of field. So again, with what Guy said, it would adjust the look of your video. And then you have the shutter speed, which will often be fixed. If it's 30 frames a second, would be 1/60th. And then, so by process of elimination, you have ISO that you can adjust. So that's where I would start with.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. How do you keep in-ear monitors clean? They seem very delicate.
Ken.
Yeah, this is the perfect time to actually use a Q-tip, because you actually really shouldn't use them for cleaning your ears, but a Q-tip to actually clean the so gently, a bit of warm water and just gently with a Q-tip. That's what I would use.
William.
It depends. The Ear Heroes, it's alcohol, neither soft cloth or Q-tip. Depends on the manufacturer's design.
Chad.
And if they're literal in-ears, you can pick up a kit like this. There you go. And this is a little white plug if it ever comes into focus, because darn my eyes. There's a little white plug in there that you use this end to pull out the existing plug and this end to insert the new plug that keeps all the nastiness from getting inside the monitor.
Very cool little tool. Jeffrey.
I actually use a toothpick, a toothpick, or even these little bread twist ties sometimes work really well. And then isopropyl alcohol, because over the summer, a few of us kind of experienced that wearing in-ears. There can be what's called swimmer's ear. You can actually get that through wearing that way too much. So cleaning off those IFBs as best as possible, having extra nubs. I have when I play drums, I have the foam ones, so they can get a really good seal, and then I can replace them every couple shows.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, what strategies have succeeded in managing the conflict between what the creatives want and the budget can support?
Ken?
Creatives always want more than what the budget is, so they're used to being told no, they can't have that. So constantly wanting more than the budget. So it's not I've never found it an issue saying, oh, no, that's what the budget is, and so that's the limit.
Deanna?
I agree with Ken. Definitely expectation management right from the start. The first contact that you have with your client, you need to set the expectations and be really clear on the same page about that. Otherwise, this is going to be a bit of a disaster.
Sky?
I've come down to the three letters: time, quality, resources. And how do you partnership with the creatives as well as the deadlines as well as the budget? And again, trying to not take it personally or keep it out of being personal. Understand the value that everybody brings to a project, but help them invest what they want to invest. And that's where Talalik has said, help me understand what is the joy that you expect to get out of this? Now, if that's financial compensation, then that's a different negotiation.
Jeffrey?
So it's really a script line. For me, at least, so if somebody comes up and says, hey, what if we could do this? It's like, that's great. If we have the time, we could give it a try. But of course, with time and resources, our main focus is to do this first. And then if we got an opportunity, we'll try it and see what happens.
Hey Tony, can you make me co-host? I just want to show you. There's a cartoon about this. There's a cartoon that's very apropos for this here. Let me see here if I can share my screen. You just got to make me co-host, or maybe not. That's right. Oh, it's so good. It's like it. There we go. Watch this. This is the one we always talk about here. So you have how the customer explained it, how the project leader understood it, how the analyst designed it, how the programmer wrote it, how the business consultant described it, how the project was documented, operations installed, how the customer was billed, how it was supported, and what the customer really needed. Sorry, I don't know if anyone's seen that before, but it's in my industry, it's a very common meme. So anyway, we talk about it a lot.
I need that.
Yeah, I'll post the link in Mokana. It's part of an article, but it's been around for a while. So
awesome. All right, next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. If you are getting into Pro Tools, is it best to purchase a perpetual license versus the subscription? What have your experiences been with both plans? I've always purchased perpetual licenses for all of my software.
Search.
I think I will say first it depends, but nowadays most software company want a subscription business because it's a continuous flow of money, and they will give you incentive like free upgrade and things like that that you won't get with the perpetual license. So it's an evaluation to do, but I prefer subscription nowadays.
Alex?
Yeah, the big thing is if it doesn't take, you can always get out of it. I never get the yearly memberships or anything else. I literally turn it on a month and I pay a little extra for the first 3 or 4 months to see if I'm actually going to use it. I did that with Pro Tools specifically and decided specifically that I would rather hire someone else to do it. so I just went back to Logic. But it was definitely I was glad that I spent it. I spent money on it for 3 or 4 months and then didn't have to pay the same price as the perpetual license.
All very good points when it comes to buying subscription stuff and knowing if you're actually going to make any use of it. Next question is from Sky.
Next question is from Sky Gleason in Seattle, Washington. Any recommendations for production insurance for a Seattle, Washington-based company?
Alex?
You don't need to be, it doesn't need to be in the state. So I would I would do a search, and Hartford is what we used in the past, or what I've used in the past. They have a kind of an entertainment-driven insurance system that you can get. But you're looking for a broker typically to do this for you, and you can find those in LA. And you should just search for production, video production, insurance broker. Don't bother to try to do it yourself. It's worth letting them make a little extra money on it and have someone else sort that out. All the details. There's a lot of details. If you get the details wrong, you'll be uninsured when you need it. So this is definitely, people hire editors because they're professionals. They don't edit themselves because it'll be all a big mess. In the same way, you want to hire a professional to get your insurance, or you really put yourself. You might as well not get it. So that's my opinion. As someone who has done it myself and then hired a broker, it's just way easier. And if you contact me, I'll try to find our broker for you, and you can hire him. He's great. All right.
Next question.
Next question is from Serge Blondin in Montreal, Canada. With a Stream Deck configure to controlling an Atem Mini, does the panel recommend to still have the Atem on the desk for quick access to button, or can it be hidden somewhere?
Ken?
I would highly recommend keeping the Atem on desk. Well, in my experience, because this is my Stream Deck, which I did have beautifully set up, that's no longer connected, so I have to work that out. So being able to get access to the buttons, yes, having it on the desk. In my experience, yeah, if I didn't, then I'd have issues.
Jeffrey?
If you have the 6-button Stream Deck, then it's very possible to use it and not see it. One thing that Stream Decks don't have that I was really hoping that they would have done in the 32-button is have that same raised key. On a keyboard, you have the J and the F keys that have little nubs on them, so you can actually put your fingers down and actually figure out where you are. So if you do it in a place where you're not seeing the LCD screens, then you might want to have some sort of tangible guides, like a piece of tape or something like that, so you know exactly which button is the first button, and then you can guide from there. But if you're doing it, it doesn't have to be on the desk, but it's a visual device, so it's nicer when it is on the desk.
Alex?
I'm actually curious how many people actually use the interface use the actual Atem very much. I definitely use it all day. I just don't use any of the little buttons. I think that the problem that they made is they surfaced so much control on it. It's a little overwhelming in the extreme. And I find myself not using any of the buttons. The big buttons down at the bottom I use all the time. And a few of the other buttons, but I've just noticed that most of the other things, like especially transitions, I mean, who uses those anyway? So you just kind of fill up a lot of space, in the thing that maybe make it look busier. But I think I just don't find myself. I'm curious. And curious as to whether other people do it.
All right, next question. Sorry. Well,
Bill, you gotta raise it in the back end. You can still raise it while we're answering them, so that we know that you're coming. But go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm using a touchscreen monitor for rather than the Atem. So I have the Atem Studio, TV Studio HD. So there's plenty of things as far as transitions, et cetera, that I don't have access to, and it's giving me a fan hum in my audio.
all right, next question.
Next question is from Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Herrenab, Germany. Does the Mixpre Series from Sound Devices have a De-Esser? If not, how would you add one?
Chad.
I do not think that the Mixpre has access to a De-Esser, but you can add to your signal chain something like vMix, where you can add VST plugins, and Waves has a De-Esser plugin right now for about $30, waves.com. And I think Isotope also has a De-Esser in its Nectar package. I could be off on that.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Michael Matter from Brisbane, Australia. He said, how important are pre-flight checklists before a show, and what do you use to manage these reliably or repeatedly?
Repeatedly. Vienna.
It's Brisbane. And I like to use Apple Notes actually, because it's just got this really clean checklist feature and anyone can use it. I can share it with Apple users and non-Apple users alike. And for every gig that we do, we just have a checklist of what has to happen and what equipment we need. And then we can just uncheck them all at the end of the gig and do it for the next gig. So it's very repeatable.
Nice. Chad.
We were just talking about this morning. I was talking about, isn't it nice how you go through an event so many times with a client that you don't have to do the checklist, and and that is not a true statement at all. This past week, I had an engagement where 2 of the participants in this panel almost lost power because they didn't have their power adapter in. They sacrificed it to bring in a different audio adapter. And making sure you're plugged in is part of the checklist. So yeah, always have a checklist. Always know what you're going to cover. Don't forget the little stuff.
Alex.
Yeah, the funny thing is one of the reasons you have a checklist when you're flying is because your tendency to get complacent and skip over things, and so you want to make sure that that's when you end up not making it to your destination in one piece. And so you want to think about that process. We definitely go through. I wouldn't say that we always have hard checklists, but definitely for things that we do all the time, you'll hear us going through this checklist that lasts for sometimes an hour of checking things like, is this working? Is this working? Is this working? Is this working? It doesn't happen constantly, but you'll hear us kind of working through these processes. And especially on a large event, there's a long checklist of things that we do that we kind of are looking for. Go look for this. Where are these levels? Where are these pieces? Where is this? Do we see it on this device? Do we see it on this device? Do we see it on this device? And those are hard checklists that we work through. And we use, Google Sheets or Notes. Those are the two. The Google Sheets has little checkboxes the same way that Google Notes does. And you can, I actually prefer numbers myself because I can put a lot more into it. But I use Notes, the check marks in Notes personally, like as Vienna does, because it's everywhere all the time.
Good call. All right, next question.
Next question is from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Calling all hosts, how do you keep eyeline great without a telestrator?
Vienna?
I'm not quite sure what eyeline is. I haven't heard that term specifically before, but I'm guessing it means looking at the camera and not having it look like your eyes are following a telestrator. And in that case, I've used telestrators before, and no matter what happens, it looks like I'm reading a telestrator, and even if I'm trying my best not to look at it. So for me, as talent, from the talent side, I would say I like to speak more naturally and not have to read from a script. I can practice, but at the end of the day, it's a lot more natural and a lot more personable if you can just look at the camera and talk.
Ken?
Yeah, I have telestrators, but I still haven't set it up on the camera. It is a discipline to look straight at the camera and not look down now at your faces on the screen. One way I check, well, one way of doing it, when I look back at the videos and see myself not looking down, yeah, it reminds me to look up. Also, a little sticky note just below the camera lens, you can put on there and draw a smiley face on it. So it's kind of another visual cue to look into the lens and not down at the faces that you see on the screen.
I like the sticky note. That's great. Jeffrey?
So this is how I have mine set up here. So as you can see, my camera is right there. And it is on a slider, so I can move back and forth to kind of put myself into the center of the frame for the best eye line possible. Then I have, in this case, it's Teleprompter Pro because I'm on a Windows machine, so I can see everything everything from office hours here. But if I need to read something, I try to have that text right about here so I can see the line. This is going to be the line I'm reading where it says scrolling text for. And then professionals is what's coming up. I can kind of read that last part so I can kind of prepare myself for the next line. But keeping it as short left and right as possible will make it easier, and people will be able to see the eye line as we go.
I've shared my setup before, not that I'm great at keeping the eye line, but like I have two screens on either side of my camera, and then I put the Zoom meeting dead between the two screens, so it splits down the center. And then I look at the camera, but then I have to, like on Saturdays, I'm over here reading my questions, and then you see me look away to see who's up next and things like that. Alex?
For eyeline, excuse me, for eyeline directly, I put my lens is right above literally cutting off part of the lens. If I made it any lower, you'd see the soft edge of my iMac that is right above, and I put whoever I'm talking to right underneath that. So it's not perfect, but I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at Emily right now, and you can see that my eyes are pretty close, to it at the distance that I'm at. And so without a telestrator, I'm putting a teleprompter back in here in the next week or two, but that is that's how I try to keep it when I don't have that there. If you're actually using a teleprompter as a teleprompter, the other thing to remember is that you literally want all of the text to sit in about 10% of your eye, 10 degrees of your eye. So whatever distance your teleprompter is, it wants to sit in that middle 10% or 10 degrees, because your eyes won't scan. And you can get to a point, if you study teleprompting, you can just stare directly at it and read it without moving your eyes. Almost nobody does that, but it's possible. But you'll see it even with if they get closer to somebody with a teleprompter, you'll see their eyes start to scan. And that's the thing you're trying to avoid. Next, sorry.
Yeah, I think Jeffrey just popped out and popped back in. He didn't have any more to add, right?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that if you do have a monitor behind a camera, so what some people will do is they'll try and take that monitor, if it's a wide one, like I have a 50-inch right behind this camera, if you take it farther back, then you get into that 10% eye line. You can see everything on the screen if you have the room to do it. But if you don't have the room to do it, then try to tighten up everything as much as possible. Because I know, Tony, you have a pretty enclosed space there.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Vienna in Austria. It says Aus. See, that makes it harder. See, it's the Aus that gets you. See, when you say Vienna and then you have the Aus, it's very hard not to say Austria. So that's Bill's revenge on me. All right. Vienna in Australia. When I don't have my Atem, what is the best way to key in images and video on Zoom?
Ken.
I'm not sure whether this works, but I think you can do, because now Keynote, you can have video on Keynote. So I've been playing around with that, and it looks, so having your video in Keynote, and then you can use all the beautiful tools within Keynote to key in other images.
Chad?
Many of the software encoders that are available allow you to do this. I use vMix for that purpose as well. I know OBS would be able to do it, bringing it in as a virtual camera and just keying one layer over another.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm gonna echo what Ken said in that area. Is the upgrade to Keynote? We're going to talk about it on Thursday and really dig into it for a whole second hour. It is the biggest upgrade to Keynote or any presentation tool ever. Like it is. Here's the thing: is that I've been playing with it since we talked about it, and since I saw Ken show like how it was all working, and I started throwing in. It is a switcher. I mean, kind of a switcher that's built in. You'd have to know what you want to talk about. You don't have the free form that you'd have in OBS or vMix or mimoLive. So you can't. mimoLive is another one, by the way, that you can do all that with. So those would be the ones that you would use if you really want to have random access. I want to switch to this and this and go from this to this. But if you know where you're going with the conversation, and you want to do a presentation, the new Keynote has basically video objects that are treated like any other object. They are exactly the same as every other object. You can put borders around them. You can rotate them in. You can flip them in. You can have them fade in and out. You can have multiple ones popping across, and you can even do magic move where you go from one slide to another and have it zoom up and move around. And I don't know if it'll be interesting. We'll talk about it in the education hour, but oh my gosh, like I was just like, I lost a couple hours playing with it. It's kind of amazing. And I just don't have it on this computer because I haven't upgraded the OS to get there, and then the thing to remember about Keynote is that you can share to a window. That's the key. So that you can share it to a window with all of this production and then send it out to Zoom.
Great. Next question.
Next question is from Vienna, Austria. Vienna in Australia. Has our office hours show ever been confused with another show or organization of the same name? What happened?
Alex?
I don't think it actually, I mean, people who know it know it. It was a horrible name. Like, I just want to say, like, it was not, I didn't do it on purpose. It's not like I did a bunch of case studies or did any planning or even any planning at all. I just called it office hours because I was like, well, I'm just going to open up office hours. People understand what that means. It's not very original, and we'll have, if we get bigger, we'll probably have problems with that. But it's also not very copyrightable. Like no one else could really do anything with it because it's too common. So I guess we can just kind of do our thing. So if I was a branding company, though, I would be horrified at what I did. So.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Samuel Nordvik in Norway. Is there a way to trigger a native Stream Deck button or command without physically pressing the button?
Jeffrey.
Since Stream Deck was meant to be the assistant to the actual thing, I have not seen anything to be able to have a command, even have a command where I could say, LA, press button number 2 and go from there. Not to say it's not possible, but and of course you can also use things like Companion to press buttons if you need to be remote. And of course, Stream Deck has the Stream Deck app where you can also connect up there. But nothing that if you have hard-coded on the Stream Deck to the computer type button, I don't think there's anything out there that would allow you to do that.
Chad?
I was thinking that Joe DeMax's central control was able to do that.
All right. Alex, you want to add on to that?
Nope, I don't have anything.
Okay.
I don't know enough about it. It's outside of my skill set.
Okay, next question then.
Next question is, has anyone ever linked Unreal 4 to a lighting console via DMX?
Alex.
My recommendation would be to find Tlalok. I think he's actually done it in the past or had it connected in some of his shows. So he's not on our show today, but you'll see him oftentimes on our show or in after hours.
Next question.
Next question is from Michael Mader from Brisbane, Australia. What are panelists doing to help improve crew morale in COVID times, both in person and virtually?
Vienna.
So I noticed that I'm the only person who's raised my hand to answer this question, but I think just reflecting on it, it's a bit ironic because we on office hours are future-proofing ourselves and COVID-proofing ourselves by making sure that we connect here on office hours, making sure we look good and sound good. And that is how we support each other during COVID times, is that we connect each other with high fidelity, and it is just like the real thing. It is reality. So the word virtual is slowly losing its meaning.
Alex.
I think in general, the ultimate protection against or for morale is being connected to other people, and we haven't been able to be connected physically to other people, but we have connected a lot here, as Vienna was talking about. And so I think that is the ultimate insurance plan is to have a large community that you're part of. And so I think that we need to keep on doing what we're doing, spread it where we can. I think that people have to feel like they're connected to other folks and they're continuing to move forward, and there's something to look forward to. Our industry is about to go through a lot of industries. What happened over the last 2 years is not the end; it's the beginning. So as things start to clear up, the infrastructure and everything else that was put in place is profound. And so over the next 10 years will be very tumultuous, and so it's important for us to have a place to kind of trade notes.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Emily's thoughts on the VDO.ninja.
Okay, so I don't know if it's like muscle memory for Zoom, but the mute button on that show was driving me insane. Every time I clicked it, sometimes it would click and sometimes it wouldn't click. And then if I double click the next time, it wouldn't, it was really clunky to me. And then of course, at the beginning, losing you or getting you and not the rest of the panel and not being able to see everyone, was a little nerve-wracking. But overall, I think once we got past that, I think, Aaron and Erica and I talked about it afterwards, like what held us up. And the only thing that we found really disturbing was that mute button, like getting it to unmute when we wanted it to unmute and not. It just seemed to be slow to react, and then you get nervous and you do more pushing, and that's what you do, push buttons when you freak out, just double click everything. And so that was the only feedback I really had. Otherwise, I felt like it went the way you would expect it kind of to go. I missed Zoom though, I have to be honest.
I was just wondering, do you think it was an issue of familiarity, or it really is clunky to you or your experience?
Yeah, I think it was just, and like I said, I'm not sure if it's muscle memory from Zoom, and because Zoom just does what Zoom does, and that's what and like the buttons are in a different order and things. Like I couldn't read the chat among like when I started to freak out and I started sending messages, I couldn't tell if anyone was responding to me. I couldn't tell if like the screen wouldn't pop all the way open, and things just looked weird. I think, it's definitely something that if you got used to using it, the flow might come with it. But I think if we were going to do that panel using Ninja, that we should have done like a pre-show, just play around with all the buttons, push everything, do everything before we went live. Cause I get anxious anyway, but like, I was like, like it's not going to go, or I'm going to mute or unmute, or I can't see the question or what's going on. And it just like completely brought the level here. Whereas like, office hours, the only thing I had to worry about when I changed over to a host or even a panelist on office hours was know where the mute is and know when to unmute and mute and make through mic check. So, if you made it through mic check, you were fine. So I think maybe if the show's on Wednesday, doing like a pre-show Tuesday check and just having a quick meeting, like not even really long, maybe like 20 minutes, pop in, these are where the buttons are, this is where everything is. I think it would have brought all the panelists to more of a comfort with it. But we also had the issue, like mine started to have that little fire CPU sign at the end of the session, like towards the end. And because of what happened to Chris, I was afraid it was going to happen to me. And then I got that just added more anxiety to the whole process. But again, it has some bugs we have to work out and work through. Alex?
I think that in the end, the fundamental problem with VDO.ninja and anything that uses WebRTC is using the web browser. The web browser is highly inefficient for video. So, and it is something I've struggled with for a decade, over especially the Chrome browser specifically, but all of them, especially when they're pushed into video, we're asking a browser to do something it's not built for. And I know that Google likes to do it, and they've done it there. But if you look at your CPU usage, it gets pretty rough pretty quickly in most of these WebRTC solutions. And so, I think that it can work and it's nice and easy, and I think we should know how to do it. But I think that you always want to try to look for a application-based video transport system that may be using WebRTC, but it's going to be a lot lighter from the CPU perspective. That's what we found over the last decade is getting into an application. And the one that I'm experimenting with a fair bit is Stream Voodoo, which costs something, but the web version of it was not particularly useful to me. But the application version is interesting. It's coming up online.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. It says, I've heard of universal audio plugins being used in a live environment. How would you integrate them? Would you use the Apollo interfaces or a DSP accelerator? I'm thinking of the DSP accelerator would be better without the ADDA latency.
Alex.
I probably would only use the universal audio plugins with the hardware, the universal audio hardware. I probably would not use them on a third party. I think you're going to find higher latency and lower stability.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. I've tried connecting mimoLive's virtual camera to Keynote, and Keynote did not see the virtual camera. What could cause that?
Guy.
Yeah, I think just the hooks haven't been written yet. I'm having the same issue. So virtual cameras out of mimoLive or NDI virtual camera aren't working. So I'm kind of bummed. They just need to write those hooks so that we can bring in other sources. It just pops up and it just says not available. There's no you had new source, and it just shows the webcam source, the physical webcam sources.
Alex.
Do we know if those virtual cameras are native to M1s or natively written?
That's a good question, but nothing's working so far. So the NDI5 virtual camera is not working, and this is on an M1 that I'm doing the tests on, and mimoLive alpha version for M1 is also not working, as popping up as a source in Keynote.
Yeah, my guess is that it has to be written completely natively because what Keynote is doing is really complicated. Like that's why I got so excited about it. For it to pass that video in and do the compositing and doing the way it does it is very hard. And so I have a feeling that if you're not writing exactly the way Apple wants it to be written to serve up video, that it's not going to be supported.
All right, Jeffrey.
Have you tried doing the whole looping back into it? Sending it out via a monitor and then capturing that with a capture card, bringing that into Keynote, or would that just kill the process?
I'm sure that would work if you brought it back in through some other capture card. It would see that for sure. Yeah, so you could use an Atem Mini or something like that. Absolutely. It's just trying to loop it through software and trick it. It's not working.
All right, next question.
I think
whoops, sorry, Serge. Sorry, Serge. We can't hear you though.
Alex or Guy, did you were able to use the Atem Mini as the webcast input?
Atem Mini shows up, yeah.
Okay.
As a note, the Mini recorder does not. So the Mini recorder does not show up. It doesn't show up at all to it as an option, but the Atem does.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Vienna in Australia. How do the panelists describe what office hours is and what they do on it?
Mark?
Office hours, when combined with after hours, is the new standard for continuing education in the media industry.
That's good.
And it's very fun and interesting.
Chad?
That was nice. Office Hours is a community of several hundred, a couple thousand people all learning from each other, talking every day about production, media, technology, programming, cooking, mixology, social interaction, learning a lot of stuff from each other. And what do I do? absolutely anything I can to support it. I look for an opportunity to help out. If something's missing, I try to find it. If there's a question I can answer, I try to answer it. And if I see something that's going to help smooth things along, I try and implement that.
Vienna?
I asked this question because I have to explain this to people, and it's really difficult. I was at a forum where I was showing people the stage, and Carl was with me as well, and we got on office hours on the phone, and the person sitting next to me said, who are you talking to? And I said, office hours. And he said, what's that? And I said, how do I explain this? So this is why I asked the question. I need you guys to write those descriptions down for me. Thanks.
Alex?
I think, I mean, obviously I explain it probably a couple times a day, and I mostly just say that, we over COVID, a bunch of us got together as enthusiasts and professionals that are really into media production, but really just curious people, and we all get together at least once a day to discuss and just do Q&A, and then a lot of us just kind of have formed the ultimate global water cooler, where we all sit around and keep on talking all day. We just leave it over there. It's a water cooler. You can go over and hang out for a little while and then go back to what you were doing. Some people hang out there all the time, and which, as in many companies. So it's a great place for us to trade notes.
Jeffrey?
Alex, you forgot the most important part. And we have a band.
And we have a band. I do talk about the fact if people ask any more questions than the very first ones, I don't jump out. The band is hard to say right at the very beginning. We have a band, but generally, as I start talking about how cool it is, and I go, and we have a band that makes songs, great songs. It's amazing. Yeah.
Pump the band. We need swag now. Like, there's got to be like t-shirts and stuff.
We just need to get the whole thing organized this month, but there will be swag. There will be. I promise.
Yes.
I used to design swag, so there will be swag.
Cool. Next question.
Next question is from Serge Blondin in Montreal, Canada. Recommendation on training video for internal use. Plan to use OBS to record from an Atem Mini.
Jeffrey?
If you're looking for training video, it's better to actually try and find somebody to actually do that and get an understanding of what you're doing the training for, because once again, it depends on what you're using all these devices for. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there that can explain using OBS and Atem together. But if you're doing something very specific, that you might need somebody to actually spend some time to work on it. So there's many different people, including myself, that can build training videos for you. So just have to contact one of us and say, hey, what are your rates?
All right, next question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to raise my hand. Is it okay?
Oh,
if I say
raise your
something
hand.
there? So I mean, one of the things that I would really think about, and I say this pretty often, is it's easy to make something or easy to watch something. It's very hard to do both. And so I don't recommend trying to do live records of training videos that people are going to have to watch in VOD later. If you're going to do a training video, figure out how, design it, write it, cut it together, learn from the folks on YouTube that do that. People like Jeffrey or Justine Ezerick or Marquez Brownlee or Renee Ritchie, and watch how they suck all the air out of what they're doing to make sure that they're dropping to you something that's really dense. This is the information that you actually need. And, that's what you want to think about for training. Sometimes you don't have time, and just capturing it is the best you can do. But just know that when you just try to capture a live presentation or a long drawn out thing, it's just really hard to watch, so I don't even want people pre-record it when they take a long time. I try to watch it fast. I try to skip to things, but just think about the fact that you want to be conscious of the effort it takes for someone to actually watch something that is a slow distribution of knowledge.
All right, now next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, how are catering and domestic services, deliveries, mail, for example, handled on set? Is there a village of RVs or small mobile housing for crew and cast, along with the service trailers for food and other needs?
Alex?
There is usually a crafty area that is there. In small events, there'll be a table with some tea and coffee a lot of coffee, and then a couple little snacks. Nowadays, it used to be bowls of things. Nowadays, everything's all packaged, of course. And oftentimes a lot of the crafty has been pulled away from the table so people don't go grab it. And there's a person there that is basically, there's a big poster that has pictures of all, the Snickers and the thing, whatever you want. And then they'll go get it for you, carefully and socially distanced and all those other things. And so that they'll it's become a little bit like that. So a lot of our catering has changed, in the sense that we moved largely away, not completely away, but largely away from the kind of cafeteria style. Everyone just kind of coming in and, slopping their own food. It's almost always served. But yeah, and a lot of times those come in, they show up. In a small event, you'll get boxed lunches, or salads or whatever you want. And those come in with everybody's name on top and everything else. A lot of companies have gotten really good at, you can send out a link to everybody and they can fill out. Chipotle does this, but there's a lot of other places that do it. And everyone can order their own and it all goes into a single order. And then they go and pick it up and it has hopefully everybody's name on it. Chipotle doesn't do that. So you have to kind of figure out who you got. But the larger events will have it catered. And those will be service providers that come in and do it. The best one that I've had in the last year is I had one where they're making the corn tortillas for the tacos fresh. Like literally they're mashing it in front of you and cooking them and making it. It was a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago. It was great.
There's a huge festival in Montreal, music festival, Osheaga. They have the best catering I've ever seen in my life. It's an entire village. They get all the restaurants in Montreal to come and cook a specific dish, or they have a whole coffee station. It's the most amazing thing. And I was on tour with the National and I was telling them, because we were going to the show, and I'm like, you guys are going to have to check out catering. And like one guy literally cried because the food was so good, because catering food can be hit or miss. But I mean, he was like, it was more than you said it was going to be. So anyway, Alex.
I don't know when they're going to come back, but what you want to also keep your eye out for is for the Fancy Food Conference. Fancy Food Conference is excellent. Now you need to know somebody in the industry to get in, because you have to be someone. So I was a sous chef for a day and got to go to it in San Francisco. There used to be a lot of samples. I don't know what it's like now, but there used to be a lot of samples. I think I gained like 5 pounds just walking through the conference.
Okay, so I just want to take a pause real quick and remind the educators to raise your hands, because we're getting close to the end of the hour, and go ahead with our next question.
And this will probably be the last question of this hour, so that we can give our educators time to do their mic checks. The next question is from Douglas Carmichael, and he said, "How does one guard against the maze of actors when creating complex Isadora patches?"
Alex.
So I'm just getting started with Isadora, but I've used a lot of nodal compositors, and the way that I have done nodal designs in the past is to group everything by ideas. So I'm doing this thing over here, and I'll pull my operators over to one place, and then I'm doing this other thing over here, and I pull those operators over to another place. So I have things that are happening, and a lot of times in other nodal compositors, you can actually group them. Say, hey, this is the group of things. But in general, what I do is I try to keep them in areas. Now, it did concern me that things being higher or lower or more to the right or left actually made a difference in the operation path. So I have to figure that out. But in the past with compositors, that's how we've kind of managed to not have it be crazy. Now, I also have a tendency while I'm thinking to align all my nodes. like they get structured while I'm thinking. I just it's kind of me shuffling around, and so they start looking very chaotic as I'm thinking, and then they kind of settle into a pretty tight structure of things that I need to know.
All right, then that brings us to the end of the first hour of general questions. We're getting ready for our educators to come in, so make sure you're raising your hands and jumping on in. Last week we had a nice quiet panel. We'd like to have a much more rowdy panel this week. See Laura's back with us, which is great. Haven't seen her in a while. Sarah's here. And we're going to have to do mic checks and go off of YouTube. So we'll have to do some housekeeping, but we'll be back shortly.
And